back to Masters of Modern. I am your host, Deku Ezekiel Midoriya, Alex Kessler, going plus ultra on all Magic formats with my co-host, Ben Bateman.
What's up, man? How you doing? Are we even keeping track anymore of how long we've done the show for? I was just, as you were saying it just now, thinking about the fact that it's the fall of 2020, and I think there's a decent chance we started doing this show together maybe in the fall of 2014, somewhere in that range. Did we pass 6 years and not even notice? Did that happen?
I think it's November is when you did the full jump on. I did just look the other day because I was on CDH Brazil's live stream, and then they recorded like an interview that they're going to release at some point. But one of the questions they asked was like, how did I get into content creation, that whole kind of story, and going over the like in that first 5 weeks. And if you add, it ends up that Andrew Brown joined, it was his first episode was the week after you're officially joining the podcast. But we had Jules Robbins, who now is the color red of all of Magic. He works at Wizards of the Coast. Eugene Wang, who won multiple GPs. Glenn, who now runs basically the Commander team for Wizards on Commander products, and Andrew Brown, who's on the play design team at Wizards, and you. That was like our 5 guests. And
it's pretty good, like a pretty good first 5, like a really high success rate. You didn't have any like schlubs, you know. Nobody in there was like really a schmo.
It was a weird run, but here we are, 5 years later. It's dope. Today we are talking about deck building and kind of the basis for deck building. A few weeks ago, you asked me a question on like where like you were wondering how I like to build decks compared to your method. We were in the middle of building our like Highlander Gauntlet online arena wheels, and just the fact that I like pumped out 3 wheels in a weekend, and like it takes you a month to figure out one deck, and kind of how Commander works. And we're doing the boxing league right now, so that's related to that as well. And then we're also going to talk about kind of in relation to that historic and the metagame and historic right now that Omnath is no longer around, and Burning Tree Emissary is back, et cetera, et cetera. And before I do that, I do want to, because I'm going to take this mask and maybe this wig off in a second, but first the mask, because it's hot in here. I'm wearing costume every day this month. Today I am Deku from the show My Hero Academia. Check it out, Instagram at Kess_Wiley. You can see everyone I did. I've sworn to do a costume every day. You will... By the time you see this, I will have also already have dressed as an Among Us astronaut and a few other things this week. So definitely go look at that and follow me on Instagram, I guess. And now I'm going to take this mask off.
You've done like a really good job with it. I feel like it's been sweet to see. Really, really good costumes, like full commitment. Definitely a lot more work than I thought. Like I would not be willing to do the level of work you're doing for the pure sake of fun. You're doing it purely for like for funsies.
There's no monetary gain. There's no value to it. Hopefully it's joy on the internet. I mean, the one thing that's been really encouraging is that people have just been like really into it throughout this process. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Hopefully like there's been a lot of bad on the internet that just in general over the last 3 months, from the Walking Dead thing to now people are being super racist about the like promo art that came out, and like get those guys out of the community because that's a whole mess. And then add real world stuff like politics and the election and COVID and everything. And just the fact that I'm like hopefully making people enjoy their life a little bit better by dressing up as a ridiculous character for 31 days straight is good. Hopefully people like that. So let me know if you think it's cool. I don't know if I'm ever going to do it again, but maybe next year we can convince Ben.
I don't know. That sounds like a little too much fun for my personality.
Yeah, you're not a fun person. You're a curmudgeon.
I'm totally fun.
You're
Are you
a curmudgeon.
kidding?
My dad actually today was like, 2 of my best friends are curmudgeons. I don't know why. Am I a curmudgeon? I was like, no. I'm like this too. All of my friends are curmudgeons, and I'm the bright light of fun that is in their lives.
If your dad's a curmudgeon, I'm a curmudgeon. If your dad's fun, I'm fun. I feel like I have so many more similarities to the way your dad does things that like I feel like that's so much more my style. If your dad's fun, I'm totally fun.
Yeah. I think you're on my friend scale. You're more on the fun side. You're curmudgeon-y with your hobbies.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I am. But like, you know what's actually hilarious to me? This is gonna make you die laughing. I didn't tell you this yet. Got to Seattle. My brother was like, "Yeah, you know, Sarah and I love to play games. We got this cool game, Wingspan. Have you heard of it?" And I was like,
"Wingspan's fun."
Yes. One of the designers at my company is Michael Grothy. He's a huge fan of Wingspan. And I remember when we were at Gen Con, he was excitedly buying it. And I was like, a bird watching game, nerd. And like, and they were like, this game's the best. You should learn it. I still haven't learned it.
They based the Secret Lair on that game.
Yeah.
That's the ornithologist or whatever, the
Yeah.
whatever. I'm never going to say that word ever correctly
People
in my
like
life.
love that game. People love that game.
And that's where you can, like, that's where my like really cool Birds of Paradise is from, and I have that Baleful Strix that's really pretty. Yeah. So Wingspan, it's fun. All right. So today's episode. Now that I've taken off the mask and I can feel my face, but wear a mask outside, everybody. Deck building. So you are someone who has been, participating in this league. I guess that's where we can kind of start on the Commander League, where we have all started with a box, built these decks based on those boxes. What was I saying? Oh, right. Okay. So for the last 3 weeks, we've been doing this Commander box sealed league, and ostensibly it's a sealed version of Commander, right? Where you open up 36 packs. We've explained this on the podcast now a few times, so I apologize for people that have heard this already. You open 36 packs, and you build a Commander deck out of them, and then every week you had 6 packs from a different set, slowly building it better in deck. I have Tazri built. You started with the black, green, blue, the
Brockus, this dude right here.
Mutate creature that you punched me in the face for 22 damage last night and murdered me, but on stream. But the gist of it is, it does kind of offer some more deck building style to limited, and it reminded me that over the summer we invented that online arena version of Highlander Gauntlet that we play in paper just to be able to play Magic during quarantine, and I was able to pump out decks so much quicker, and from what you were doing, and you were wondering what is the deck building process? How do we do that? And there was something I wanted to talk about then. There wasn't really a moment to it, and I realized today we had an opening, and at the same time, the entire format of Historic has kind of been popped into the air. So
exploding. It's totally wild, and there's opportunity, and you can brew, and yeah, it's. I think I agree with you totally. I think talking about both things is a really cool thing. My first comment on that is that I want to ask you. So I think you're sort of savant-like in your ability to build decks. I actually think you don't give yourself what you are able to do is not normal. Because I'm not the fastest deck builder, but I'm not a slow deck builder. You being able to build 4 to 5 decks in the matter of a few hours, it seems you just rifle through them, and they're kind of cohesive and they're kind of intentional. Is it that do you just use search functions and you just lock in on it and you don't divert your attention? You're able to just kind of go from 0 to 100 cards without losing focus?
I mean, maybe. I mean, obviously, I have been diagnosed with ADHD recently, and that is a symptom of that is hyperfocus. I don't know if that would be what I would. I guess to say kind of how I build a deck. So this is in every format. This is what I do in Modern. This is what I do in Standard. This is what I do in Historic. This is what I do in
Highlander,
Commander, Highlander, whatever. Is I pick an idea. The hard part maybe is figuring out the idea, right? Is okay, what do I want to do? In Commander, it's the hardest thing because I like to be a hipster. In Modern or whatever, it's a little bit easier because it's just okay, I want to play Jund, I want to play blue white. It's often why probably I like fair decks more than hyper synergistic decks. And then I make a pile. And if it's something else, I'll search things that fit that strategy. So look up Graveyard, or I'll look up Enchantment, or I'll look up Madness, or whatever that thing is. Reveal the top card of your library if it was doing Lantern. So then I on my phone on deck, or in my room or on Arena, we'll just put every single card I could ever want in that deck into a giant pile. And right now, if you look at my desk, and I think I actually could even do this using the power of can I do that with the power of OBS?
Multiple cameras?
No, that didn't work. Okay, I'll just pick it up. If you can look at my desk, there are hundreds of little piles on my desk of decks. Over here, this is a Nethroid deck that I'm building. Or not Nethroid, this is a Valdrox deck that I'm building. And you can put that back. That was a lot quicker. And then it's just sculpting it out of the pile of cards is kind of the closest, and sculpting kind of into
you chisel down right from your
where it's okay, let's go through this. Let's write which cards are good, which cards are important, which cards are wish list, which cards are kind of bad. It's kind of very much similar to building a seal deck or building a draft deck, and just slowly cutting away bad, worse and worse cards until you have something that kind of functions. And then you go into play testing and you're okay, did this work? This card was bad. It just sat in my hand, or, oh, this card's really great and I need more of it. And then slowly you whittle into a deck that's functional, through testing once you kind of create that pile. And often I have in the Marath deck I built, I have the Marath chaff box that's extra Marath chaff that is the stuff that didn't make it into the pile but was close and want to keep around because if I play a game and Marath sucks because, you know, this card isn't very good, then I can switch it out for something that's better. And so like when we actually going back to Glenn, we did a whole episode on sideboarding as like our third episode. And he kind of walked over the deck building strategy called the elephant. And it's similar, and this is for tournament play, which is you have a pile of cards available in your colors. And it's a way to make fair control decks or fair mid-range decks. And you have a pile of cards, whatever amount of cards you want available. And then you play against every matchup you think is in the metagame. And when you're playing against those matchups beforehand, just build the best possible deck in those colors against that matchup. Just like sideboard perfectly. If you had a 300 card sideboard, what deck are you building? And make notes of that, right? And like, okay, this worked, this didn't work, this card wasn't that good, this card was good, and just start taking notes on what cards are good and bad in each matchup. And then after playing 20 games against each deck in the format, you can kind of look at the aggregate of which cards were good in every single matchup, which cards were good, amazing in some matchups or bad in other ones, and just find the aggregate and then try and whittle that giant pile down to a 75 most used cards and then take that deck to a tournament. And it's great. I love building decks that way.
It's interesting. I mean, so like my process, and I think many players' process, is not too different than the one you're talking about. I mean, I think you come up with an idea, you search the terms you're familiar with. If you have, you know, kind of established knowledge of maybe an archetype or even just certain sets, or, you know, you're able to more effectively. But the thing that's different about your brain, and where I think I'm so impressed and sort of stunned by it, is you're able to stay inspired by the idea long enough to finish it quickly. Because I'll have the exact same instinct and I'll search the same terms and I'll put the same list together, but it'll take me like a week to finish one deck because I don't find it interesting after like a few minutes. If I like stall, if I hit like one roadblock, I'll just be like, and then I kind of drop it and I move on to something else. And so it's really hard for me to stay excited by the idea of building any deck. I think speaking about the other thing you mentioned, though, the whole concept of what's good and what matchup, I mean, that's the most fun thing about when you build something that's yours, or you even take a net deck, I guess, and you play enough matches with it, is you do start to figure out, like, these cards are kind of useless. What would be good here? Like, what would be helpful? And it's not just a question of, like, this giant bomb sideboard card is good. It's like, this pretty cool sideboard card is really good in my strategy, but is marginally good against the thing I'm playing against. You know, like, in the Rogues deck that I play in Modern, or in Historic, I play Cling to Dust now as a 2-of in the main deck, because just having a 1 black instant that can effectively cycle, because there's enough things in my deck that fill their graveyard. It's good. I can play lower land count that way. Drawing an extra card on my turn makes my Fairy Vandal better. So doing it that way is good. Being able to gain life is good against the burn matchups, and being able to get rid of an Uro or any of the, you know, things that are targeted by Dreadhorde Arcanist, or like, they're all kind of good. It's not the best card in the world, but it's quite good in exactly the strategy I'm playing, so it's worthwhile to play it main deck.
Yeah, and that's some of that's like information you get from testing, right? Like, every format is going to be different, and you want to be able to figure out, oh, this card's bad in this matchup, this card's good, and that's what testing is really helpful. And that's where the elephant method, I think, is really helpful. As far as just like being able to like do it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, even in Modern, I do this, right? Like, I have the blue-white deck and I have Jund, but those deck boxes are filled to the brim with extra cards that like could be good in those decks. And partially that's just like me not wanting to cut them and then have to put them somewhere else and find them when I need them.
Right. So you just keep them in the box.
So just keep them in a box, and that's why like my desk is a giant mess. But yeah, I think for me it's a lot of like looking at a format, no matter what format you're in, kind of thinking a strategy you're going for, and slowly just building a deck out of it, and really looking at like how, and like, obviously there's the things to look at, right? Like, oh, how much removal? That's like the next level, right? Is, okay, so I did, I have my pile, and now I'm whittling it down. I'm cutting bad cards or cards that don't make sense. Now the kind of the conversation comes into play of like, okay, how much removal do I have? How much interaction do I have? How many threats do I have? Is this a control deck? If it is, are my threats, you know, do I play card draw over threats? And those threats are like some mitigated ones, like a Celestial Colonnade, right? Where it's just like, it's always going to be there. Or are some of my card advantage engines threat them, blah, 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 blah. Card advantage engines threats themselves, like a Planeswalker. Or lingering souls for that matter. Or am I just like being aggressive and everything, my curve is low? Like, what is the strategy? And then like that helps dictate which things to get rid of. And then I think part of it is like the last thing I've ever done is do lands. Like that's the least important thing to me generally. Partially because most mana bases are like built for you already. In most formats, you know what your mana base is going to be. Once you figure out what your color matchup is, you get some fetches, you get some shocks. Maybe you play some Horizon lands if you're playing a higher land count and you don't care about your life total. Maybe you play some non-Horizon lands if you care about your life total. But you just figure out what your mana base is. And then you're probably going to be dictated. In Modern, I generally stuck to the rule of like 2 of every color of basic. And then as much fetches as I can get away with, and 2 of every shock was like my starting point. I always end up
getting greedy and stripping down to, speaking sort of generally, it ends up usually being 2 basics of the most prominent color, 1 each of the others, fetches and shocks, some other, and that can really punish you. It can really punish you with Path to Exiles and Field of Ruins and Ghost Quarters and things like that. But generally speaking, that tends to be my strategy, but I think yours is probably more correct.
Yeah, I think my thought is always I want to be able to cast any spell in my deck through Blood Moon, and rarely am I playing like a triple black spell. So like having in John now, mountains are the one rule of thumb that's slightly different. I'll normally go. I'll be willing to go down to 1 mountain if I need to, just partially because like if I get Blood Mooned, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, right?
It's no longer mitigating against Blood Moon. It's more mitigating against needing to fetch for a color when I'm low on health. Or if I get pathed and I want to get a mountain, or I get ghost quartered and I want to get a mountain, like that's more when making sure you have at least 1 basic is important. But going up to the 2, like going up to more than that 1, almost always is a concession to Blood Moon, and making sure that I can get those lands if I know I'm playing against the Blood Moon deck early on with fetch lands, so that I can cast my spells and make sure that there's no spell in my deck I couldn't cast if I got Blood Mooned with the basic lands I have in my deck.
Yep.
One big, it's an announcement, and I'm going to announce it. It's announced. So there's going to be a change to release content schedules at the MMcast podcast, and also YouTube channels and streams that we do. For the last couple months, we've been doing our Commander live stream every Monday. We've been doing the podcast. We would record Tuesday night. The podcast that would then come out sometime between or would come out as an audio podcast Wednesday or Thursday, and then at some point on Friday would come out as an edited version. Due to a bunch of factors, we're going to mix that up. And then a hot take would come out the following Monday. Now what's going to happen is the live stream is going to be a Twitch exclusive live stream. So we're going to live stream onto my Twitch, twitch.tv/CasWiley. And then those videos will then be posted onto the U channel as a VOD either Wednesday or Thursday, depending on my timing. Then the podcast, which we still will be recording on Tuesday nights, will be being released on Monday mornings. And then the audio will be around that time because they're edited together. The reason for that is just the effort on Marshall to get it out that quickly. The editing to get it out has made it so it kind of comes out late on Friday evenings based on the timeline that we have, and ends up that Friday evenings are a bad time to release content on the internet in general. So the plan is to have it come out on Mondays. That'll be new now. If there's hot takes, the other plan is for those hot takes to now start coming out on Fridays as kind of a new piece of right before the weekend content. So there's going to be a little bit of mix up there, and then there's going to be new content in the middle of the week, which will be the VOD version of, which is the video on demand, I guess is what that stands for.
Nice.
But the YouTube version of our live stream, non-live, will come out on Wednesdays. So those will be the new days. So Monday, Wednesday, and some Fridays, there'll be new content, plus every day there'll be a podcast on Monday, and then a live stream that evening, which will be Live Commander with me and Ben, plus many of the slew of characters and friends that we were able to bring on.
Yes, we're very excited about it, and it's been fun to expand our content. It's been super fun, actually. I've had a great time doing it, and I love all the different extra stuff we're doing. One of the things, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, is that we have been actually doing this Commander Boxing League, which is a really, really cool way to play Commander, but also to play like limited. It's like sort of a funny idea. It's a somewhat, I don't want to say it's a high cost, like startup cost, because I don't think that's totally correct. I think most players that have played Magic for a long time will eventually buy a box.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because I've had this like discussion with people on the internet a few times. In one way, it's expensive, right? If you're a Commander player that never buys cards, never plays limited, and isn't buying isn't building new decks regularly, it's expensive, right? You will go from like, I can have just one commander deck and I can play that forever and never have to buy Magic cards again. Yes, from that scale, it's expensive. But on a scale of like any other way to play Magic, either you're building commander decks more regularly than that, or you like play limited more than twice. You like standard, you like modern, you like legacy, you know, any other format, pioneer, historic. Then upfront cost $70 to $100 to buy a box, and then every 2-week period you have to add 6 packs, so it's an extra $24. So it's by end of it, it's probably around a $200 to $250 way of playing Magic. But if you look at most standard decks, they're around $200, so it's about the cost of standard. Plus, you own all those cards.
Yeah, I mean, like you buy a box. I mean, like I obviously am not playing it in my deck, but like in the box that I opened, I got like a foil full art Triome that I think is like $20 or $25. I got like a handful of other cards. Like I don't think probably what I opened in Ikoria was worth the 100 and whatever 15 or 110 that it cost me to buy it, but I'll bet you it was probably worth like $80-$90 if I like really wanted, once the whole experience was done, to offload everything. I could probably make back at least half of what I spent, if not more. So it's not like, you know, and you think about like going to the movies or going to a restaurant, like you're just paying for an experience. That's all this really is. So anyway, it's been really fun though. We've done, you know, a few weeks of it now. I definitely did the dumb thing with my second packs in terms of monetary, because I bought Apocalypse, which like was really sweet, but also so useless. And I knew it was going to be worthless. I just like really wanted to do it anyway. But I played some of those cards last night and they like got me the win. I played Life Death. How sick was it that I had Life Death in my freaking limited commander deck?
Yep, really sick. Good. You reanimated a Phyrexian Dreadnought with it, right? Or
Phyrexian Gargantua, man. Another, and that's like Phyrexian. Like I feel like that card, even by today's limited standards, is actually totally reasonable. A 4/4 for 6 that draws you 2 cards and loses you 2 life when it enters the battlefield. That's in a single color. Reasonable.
Yeah.
I was stoked.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been, so I opened Zendikar originally, and got Tazri. So like something we have learned, especially early on in the process, is the more colors you have, the better your deck is going to be. Now that's, I guess, true in CDH circles as well to some extent, but at a base level, it just lets you play with every good card you get. You don't get to the position where like you have a black-white commander and all your good cards were in blue. So like you just get to pick the best of the best, and you can, you know, I'm playing Tazri, but I'm like very, very, very lightly splashing blue, and then mostly the other 4 colors. So you can even kind of play with which colors you want there to be based on what your mana fixing is. But got very lucky. Zendikar Rising in general is very powerful because you get all of the double face lands, and they're in some ways their own version of fixing, right? Like it's different than a dual land, but like I'm splashing blue partially off of a bunch of blue double face lands. The worst case scenario, if I draw it and I don't have a blue mana to cast it, I can play as a land, right? That's something that's kind of cute about them.
I mean, Tazri is also like the ultimate version of a 5-color commander, because you can cast Tazri for 1 color, but it allows you to play 5 colors.
Yes,
that's like a stupid, like, that's like not fair at all compared to the other commanders.
And her ability is activatable off of any color combo you have, right? Because you can, it has the Scarecrow legendary creature, the 2 mana Endor hybrid 1 color Reaper King hybrid. Card sweep. So I opened that, and then for my second pack, and so my deck ended up in a weird place where it was like some lands matters cards because you can't avoid it. Just landfall is really powerful, and you just get good stuff like the Phylath and the Ashaya. Then I have a weird +1/+1's counter theme that I actually got that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice that until like halfway through, that just like a lot of cards like care about +1/+1 counters or put them on there. So I have a bunch of those. And then I have Party. My commander cares about Party. So if I have creatures with Party mechanics on them, they're better. So then for my second set, and it ends up that these packs were actually not that expensive. They're $7 a pop. I bought Khans and Khans of Tarkir, which is one of my favorite sets of all time. So I was really stoked anyways. But the fact that there's warrior tribal, like half of the creatures are warriors for some reason in that set. The Abzan mechanic of Outlast is a +1/+1 counters tribal mechanic. So it gives everything buffs if you have +1/+1 counters on them. And it has fetch lands, which goes with landfall. Was like kind of next level great. And it paid off. I got the Death Touch Outlast, the Lifelink, and the First Strike. I did not get Trample, and I did not get Flying. The Flying being the one I was most sad about. But the Lifelink Outlast is a cleric, so so what's her face finds it. Tazri finds it when you activate her ability.
Right.
So it's party tribal. And then I got 3 fetch lands. Sadly, 2 of them were both Flooded Strands, sadly, because one of them is foil. So I paid for my packs.
Still, like, so you can only play one of them?
Yeah, you can only play one of them because of the commander rules, but I wasn't really sad that I opened up a foil Flooded Strand. But I do think now I own more foil Flooded Strands than any other foil land that's not a basic.
That was how it was for me. I had 7 of them when I sold all my cards recently. Let me ask you this. So with the initial box, you obviously get a lot of multiples. So like, I think you need to stick with the 100, the singleton rule. What would you feel about going forward that in the additional 6 pack, you could play whatever you open? You could play multiple copies if you open in the 6.
I think it kind of, I think it would make my, like, I don't know if I'd like that. I think that with 100 cards, it kind of changes what the idea of the format is. It loses a little bit of it. It makes it a little bit just more like sealed league, which has existed for a long time. 2, it has the problem of like eventually cutting cards is going to become harder and harder as this goes on, right? That's why you end the league eventually. And I would be worried of just like yeah, I get the problem of like there's feel bads when you open up your packs that like you don't like what you got. I think on the reverse end of that, after week 3 especially, it just doesn't matter anymore. Like you're only going to be like you're opening up 6 packs to get like 5 cards at most, and even in like right now in my deck, like cutting 5 cards sounds impossible.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I definitely found that even with the Apocalypse cards, because like that was the one risk of opening Apocalypse for me. So just for those that like don't know what I'm talking about. So Brockus is, blue, green, black. He's a big 6/6 trample. He's from Ikoria. He can mutate from your graveyard. So my whole deck is just like sort of value blue, black, green, mutate. I think I play like 10 or 11 mutate cards. There's a little bit of a graveyard theme, but not much of it. It's really mostly just playing big beaters and really like beefy spells. I have like the Sultai Ultimatum. I open Colossification, which is epic, so I can like make my commander a 26/26 trample, which I had the entire game, by the way. And I waited until I had 10 lands so that I could play it and hold open a counterspell. I like was really disciplined, not going for it. But anyway, all that being said, when I was looking for my second packs, I was like, okay, Cons has really good stuff in these colors, and like there are some other gold sets recently. Like one of the Ravnica sets that's pretty powerful. But I was like, I want to open something weird. And back in the day, back in the Apocalypse Invasion days, multicolor sets were not nearly as thematic. They were just like these cards that are pretty good in these multicolors are kind of what you're getting. Mm-hmm. They had some theme, but it was much more just like, we're going to make this card a little more powerful at its rarity because it's 2 colors. Mm-hmm. And so, as well as some of the rares, like I could have opened Phyrexian Arena. I could have opened Pernicious Deed. Those were the 2 that I was like hoping that I opened in rare. There was also the Volver cycle, which ultimately are not the best creatures, but they're all basically these creatures that come down as like 1/1s or 2/2s. But if you pay like 5 or 6 in 3 colors, they're really good. Mm-hmm, so the black, green, blue Volver is like a 6/6 flying, pay 3 life, regenerate for 7 mana, I think, which like pretty solid. Like just the repeatable regeneration in a format where you have a lot of life is pretty solid. Fungal Shambler, Spirit Monger. There's like a lot of pretty good cards. And then the uncommons, the mutations that make you all the sapling. So I was like, and then if the key of it was that there was 2 commons in my colors that were mana creatures that were non-human. So I was like, probably I'll get one of each. I'll probably get 2 elves that make colors other than green that I can mutate onto. That's enough of a selling point right there for me. Sure. And of course I opened 3 copies of one of those mana creatures and 0 of the other one, which was like really frustrating. Yeah.
I don't feel bad. You murdered me last night. I will say getting fetch lands at the power level of what they printed cards into Rise of Zendikar was like really great. Valid Code Exploration is not a joke, to the extent that in Modern I like am heavily consider adding it to Jund. Like it's an enchantment, it comes into play, it does damage if I draw, like if I get lands off of it, it consistently produce mana advantage with fetch lands. You can hold your fetch land, so on your next turn you can fetch, and if you get a land you can play that land to activate it again. Like it's such a good card.
It's been, in the 2 games, you've gotten it out both times, and it's been the most powerful thing I felt like you were doing both times.
Yeah, I think it's the best card in my deck. I think like and like I have like some crazy stuff in my deck. I have like Phylath, I have like really cool stuff, but like I think that Valid Code Exploration seems to be the most powerful thing I do. That and Maul of the Skyclaves are the 2 probably most powerful things that I'm doing.
What is Maul of the
Skyclaves? That's the first strike flying +2/+2 equipment that attaches as it enters the battlefield.
Yeah, I guess I don't really recall that being that good.
I murdered you with it last game.
There was a lot.
Partially in this format, something that is important is that evasion. To the extent that card is so good, not even because of the +2/+2 bonus it gives, but just giving flying, that I'm adding. Moving into my next game or next week, I'm going to add the 1 mana target creature gets flying, attach it for free the first time you play it, equipment from Rise of Zendikar, because just like evasion is so important in this format, especially in my deck where I don't have a way to go above in the top. Like Carson was playing an actual Phylath deck, and he got to the point where like he could have flung a 18/18 plant token if I wasn't able to like get him by killing it while he was tapped out. And then I didn't have the ability to get rid of your giant 24/24 that punched me in the face with flying, and I died.
It was sick.
You're a murderer. So yeah, I think one of the cool things about the deck building process there is the metagaming. I think that's one of the things I really like about the format, is just like thinking, just like, I don't even know what packs I'm going to go. I was thinking about opening up Dragon's Maze because there's shocklands in that set, and just like gold cards are what's good in that set. But then I looked at the commons and uncommons, and it's terrible.
Yeah,
I forgot how terrible that set is.
I think so much more of what the additional packs you're opening are about. When you open the box, it's all about the rares, because like you figure you're going to get the majority of them. When you're opening 6 packs of something, like you can't really be looking at the rares. I mean, you look and you cross your fingers, you might get one, but like especially the mythics, no way. The chances of getting a specific mythic out of 6 is so unlikely.
Oh yeah,
commons are what you need to look at, and maybe uncommons, but commons are really the key.
The Abzan bolster cards were more of, and the warrior creature type being just on random things, were more of the incentive to opening up cons to me than any of the rares like fetch lands, or like I got Savage Knuckleblade. I'm playing him because he's a warrior, which like I didn't even know until I opened him and was like, oh, you're a warrior.
That card's sweet.
But like I like opened up the Soldier at last guy. I'm probably not going to play him. Like there's just like cards that are just like mediocre. Something that just guys and listeners, there is all of our deck lists. The deck lists are linked below. So Michael's is down there as well. And maybe Tappy will let us post there, as our Carsons and other people. So we'll post all the deck lists in that we can convince the league members in to post into the thing.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely been like a pretty fun experience getting to combine the 2 sets. I'm really looking forward to my next set. I haven't decided what I'm going to buy yet, but it's definitely just like a very fun way to play Magic. But it does bring to mind this idea of deck building and how deck building for each format is a different experience. The format that I have spent the most time building very, very recently in is Historic. Now, I know we've talked about Historic on here a decent amount, but for those that are listening and are sort of trying to figure out if what's their entry point, what's the metagame like, what should they understand about it, I think it might be fun for a few minutes for us to kind of talk about what to expect and sort of what the heart of the format is and how you attack it as a deck builder, because it's pretty cool in terms of brewing at the moment. There's definitely very, very interesting opportunity to come up with cool stuff.
I've always liked Historic. And I mean, obviously earlier this year, we argued the whole episode of like Pioneer is dead, Historic raises his king, right? Like where it was, Pioneer is always going to have trouble competing with Historic just in the long run, even if they had every single card that is available in Pioneer, because Historic is going to have burial rights in it. And like other cards, right? But like that was kind of the starting position. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. And it's been an interesting ride. Now, recently, last week, Omnath was banned, and then they took stuff off the restricted list and moved it to the ban list, but whatever, those weren't legal at the moment for play anyways. And then the unbanned Burning Emissary, and you've been playing a ton of rogues in Historic. So now that banning has happened, how have you seen the metagame shift, and how you've been playing black blue rogues for the majority of this time? How has that deck changed in the metagame? Because I know at one point people thought that was actually going to be the best deck, which in standard I think it is one of the best decks. But how do you feel about where the metagame has shifted now that it's gone?
Yeah, I mean, there's been like a handful of different things that have happened since I've started playing in the format that have changed it. I mean, I think you're always going to see people leaning towards just playing the most powerful things in the most colors they can. That tends to be like a hallmark of a lot of formats until they get to that like super, super, super hyper focused linear strategy mode. And there are some of those decks that do that. I think probably the most focused deck, and has been the most focused deck for a little while, is the Goblins deck. Mm-hmm. There's a couple versions of it, but the key of it is basically Skirk Prospector combined with Goblin Lords, and then Muxus, which once it comes down, very often hits things that give your creatures haste and allow you to attack for like 30 in the turn that Muxus comes down. Mm-hmm. There is a turn 3 win with Muxus on the play, where you go turn 1 Skirk Prospector, turn 2 land the instigator that makes you a 1/1, and then turn 3 land. Now you've got 3 goblins, 3 lands, and a skirk prospector. So you sack all 3, tap your 3 lands, play Muxus. He hits a bunch of stuff, and then you go nuts. It's
Are there
not
specific
necessarily
things he has to hit, or it's just he's just gonna get so much things that you're probably not losing, or is there like a
he hits like Muxus. Sometimes when they do a Muxus, you can get lucky, and so sometimes when it happens, you have to cross your fingers. Like, they won't get the haste version of this, so they're not gonna be able to just kill me this turn. I'll have a chance to respond. Or sometimes like Muxus doesn't hit the right goblins. Sometimes Muxus only hits like, the crappy ones, no lords or something like that. But very often Muxus will hit like an instigator, a lord, and like a
if you get
Krenko.
if you get Krenko, Goblin Chieftain, and then just other good goblins, you're just so far ahead that
it's consistent is the other thing. Like, it's one color. Everything is kind of good even without him. Krenko can just come down and just win on its own. Like, if you don't have a way to interact with Krenko, within a couple turns, Krenko just wins the game. So that's like a very, very linear, very simple strategy. It's the kind of thing that if they go for it, you have a counterspell for Muxus on that turn, they've sacked their whole board. You just win.
Okay.
Often. I play 2 main deck Witch's Vengeance, and I have for quite a while because there's like a number of decks that it's good against. This deck it's great against. There's a Merfolk deck people play it's good against. There's a red Wizards deck people play it's good against. But that Goblins deck is definitely one of the key decks in the format. There's a Burn deck. There's kind of 2 of them, I would say, but like every format will have kind of a mono red variant. The one people play the most in this format is the Wizards one. So it's playing like Gitu, Lava Runner. It's playing Grim Lavamancer. It's playing the Prowess guy that your spells have with her, Soulscar Mage. And it plays, Light Up the Stage, and then it plays 4 copies of Wizard's Lightning. It plays 4 Skewer the Critics, 4 Lightning Strike, Shock.
Sure. It's just like taking advantage of Wizard Lightning as a lightning bolt because you're playing that many wizards.
Yeah, Bone Crusher Giant. It's really good. It's a really good deck. It's very, very aggressive and consistent. Again, it's mono red. There's an Elves deck that's really good, quite consistent.
Is that the one that's playing Gigantha? Or is that more new tech that I'm looking at up here?
Gigantha, yeah. Well, so in best of one, a lot of these decks, if they're able, will play a companion just because like it's not hard to play a companion. So Gigantha is that's the card that those decks play. Just because why wouldn't they in best of one? They just get access to like having a 5-drop when they need it.
Right. If all you're playing is 1 mana, 1-drops, and who cares?
Yes, exactly. It's all just So that's like, those are like some of the key decks. There's a sacrifice deck that a lot of people like to play. Plays Mayhem Devil, plays Woe Strider. It plays the Priest of the Forgotten Gods. All those cards. It's kind of what you'd expect.
Corvold.
Yeah, exactly. It plays the Witches of, and there's a Gruul deck. It's just kind of Gruul aggro. It's much better now that they have access to what's his name again, Burning Tree Emissary. The printing of Thoughtseize into the format was definitely pretty interesting. Thoughtseize changed things so that all of these like black-based decks, whether it's like the Dreadhorde Arcanist, sacrifice decks with like Kroxa, have access to just Thoughtseize now. Or if it's like, you have these 4-color decks that play like, I guess they're 5-color decks that play like Omnath, and they play Uro, and they play Lotus Cobra, and they play Thoughtseize, and they're just kind of good stuff decks. Like, because Omnath is only suspended, your ability to play Lotus Cobra, Omnath, and Uro in the same deck is like just insane. Like, you definitely just get rolled by that sometimes.
Right.
And you have to be able to interact. So those are all kind of key things. There's a few really fun and sort of interesting decks I've seen people play. There's a Soul Sisters deck a lot of people like to play. There's an Auras deck that people will play. You have Selfless Savior, and you also have the 1 white enchantment creature that can sacrifice to give a creature protection from the color of your choice on the turn. And Curious Obsession, that plays Lurrus because everything's cheap. Like the Aura guy. What's the one that you draw a card whenever you cast an Aura spell? It gets +2/+2 for every Aura on it. I can't think of the name of it right now. Core Spirit Dancer. That deck is pretty popular. So there's a whole variety of decks. It does not feel like the format is homogenous. Like everybody's playing the same things. In terms of, I think, the key things that people are doing that you want to like remember are in the format. Those cards we mentioned right at the top, like Uro, Omnath, those are a lot of the most powerful cards in the format. So remember, people will do that. There's a lot of like real grindy value-oriented decks. Uro is like that. Kroxa is like that.
Sultai mid-range, 3-color sacrifice, like all the sacrifice decks are basically that, right?
Yeah,
the 4-color Yorion deck.
But the cool thing about it is there's a bunch of monocolor decks. There's also a bunch of like 4 and 5 color decks. There's really good aggro options. There's like a mono black aggro deck that plays Phyrexian Obliterator as its top end. There's mono blue tempo, like the one from Standard that Autumn did so well with. That's very good in this format. There's still a Golos deck people play. There's like some mono green or like 2 color big mana artifact decks that want to like ramp into Ugin with like Mind Stones and they want to play Karn and Nissa and things like that. Those are pretty cool. But I mean, there's like a pretty developed format. It's a lot of different decks, and I don't actually feel like I play the same deck all the time. There was a minute like 3 months ago when I was playing Goblins a lot, and it does feel quite good, but it feels super fragile. So it actually doesn't feel like the deck to beat at the moment. I think being prepared for those big 4 color decks feels kind of like the thing you have to be ready for. The power level is so high on those decks.
So you were doing really well with your rogues list for a while there. Would you say that it's still positioned really well, or do you think maybe the metagame has moved in a way that it's less good? Are you a deck? I guess answer that, and then I have the next question. But
it's not a deck that necessarily needs to take advantage of what your opponents are doing. It's powerful enough that you can win a lot of games. I think that if I committed like 6 hours, like I sat down, I was like, I'm going to make Mythic right now, I'd be able to do it because I consistently am able to grind my way higher and higher. I'm like right now, like Diamond level 3. I got all the way up to like Diamond level 1, like 4 games away from Mythic last season. And I didn't really grind that hard. I was just playing periodically. So it's really good. I mean, the printing of the new 1/3 flash guy for 2 that, mills 2 whenever a rogue attacks, he's really good in the deck. Like he pushes the deck way over the top. The new X3 flying lifelink death touch guy for 3 is quite good. You have good control, good counter spells. The new removal spell, destroy target creature or planeswalker CMC 2 or less that also has kicker. That card's valuable. I think it's a really good deck. I mean, you shared the list. I've done really well with it. Curious Obsession is great.
I was going to bring that up. So for those who don't know, so the list is on our Patreon, but it's there for free. So if you go to patreon.com/TheMMcast, you can see the Rogues deck list if you're interested there. I think something that we're going to start doing more often is just posting deck lists for free on our Patreon as a non-tier based thing. So anyone can go check it out. And so you can find it there. Also, just since we're in the world of patron shoutouts, check out our Patreon if you're there and you want to donate. Obviously, appreciate it. One thing you do get that's really cool is you get an early release of the episode raw feed. That actually will come out at the same time it's come out every week, regardless of the changes. So that'll still come out every Wednesday. There'll be a audio only Patreon exclusive, and normally there's a lot of cool content. So for instance, there's about 10 minutes every episode at the beginning that me and Ben are making a point to talk about non-magic stuff, plus some magic stuff. We had a whole conversation today about Ben's favorite anime from back in the day. If you want to know what that is, you're going to have to find out, partially because I'm in a anime-based costume at the moment. Last week, I think we talked about chips, maybe.
Yes, we chips are like
candy bars or fast food. Yeah, we've like
delicious
ranked a bunch of different food stuff things,
food items,
and so definitely check it out. It is like a cool conversation. Plus, you get swear words and all the weird stuff that happens. If it wasn't included, Ben had a whole like 5-minute conversation directly to the camera that I wasn't here for that you get to get access to. And if they did leave it in, that's some of the content you can expect. So definitely check that out. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/TheMMcast. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, like all that stuff if you're, and make sure to check out all the things we've talked about on the schedule. Anything else for this episode, Mr. Bateman?
Yeah, I think maybe before we go, just to kind of finish the sort of conversation about Historic and the introduction to it, I think because this podcast came from a modern point of view, we can just quickly reference what the best version sort of the best, maybe like 5 or 10 things you do, the best card version of what things in modern are in Historic. So like, I think starting with a cantrip, Opt is the best cantrip. It's the thing people do in this format. Like you don't have Serum Visions or any of those other really good ones. You see a lot of blue decks play Opt. The best disruption is definitely Thoughtseize. That's a really good card. It's super solid. We don't have Fatal Push. That one I talked about, which is called Bloodchief's Thirst. That card's really solid. In terms of other mono black, Eliminate's pretty good. Those are both like pretty sound cards.
I was gonna ask counterspells next.
Yeah. I think so. So Drown in the Lock is played. It's pretty solid. Drown is a totally good card. It obviously is played in the right decks, but it's definitely good. I mean, Drown there's a lot of ways to take advantage of it. Lofty Denial is really good. They play that in the mono blue tempo deck. I played in my deck. Spirits plays it, I think. There's not like a really good 2-mana counterspell people are playing. You don't have just like the one. People play the cycling one, blue one, counter target spell. You can cycle it for 2. Yeah, Mystical Dispute is really good. I see it a lot less than I used to. I definitely feel like it's not as ubiquitous as it was, but it's still really, really good. The other cantrip that's played a ton is Growth Spiral. That card's played like crazy. Like people play Growth Spiral, and like that you see that if blue green is represented and they don't like leave it up, that's like you see that just constantly in the format.
Right. Okay.
As far as burn goes, Shock probably is the most common, I would say. I think all those other ones are a little more deck specific. Even Lightning Strike I think Shock's the one. You see a lot of decks play Shock. It's good enough in the format, gets a lot done.
Would you say you like the format more modern versus historic? Not having access to stuff like Fatal Push Path and Lightning Bolt?
I don't notice that much of a difference, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, like, in the deck I play, for instance, I have good enough answers to the things that would be problematic for me. I guess like maybe the thing like not being able to just like path an Uro, like if I could path your Uro when it hit the battlefield, no, see, even that's not good because you get a land and then another land. I wouldn't even do that. Yeah, I don't even think it really matters that much. Okay. I guess it'd be nice to be able to path like an Obliterator, but I have ways to kill Obliterator that I don't really care about. I'm trying to think in like what are the other things that you do? The Elf, Llanowar Elf, that's the best. Elvish Mystic, I guess. I guess it's called Llanowar Elf in this format.
Llanowar Elf is legal.
Yeah, because of Dominaria. Yeah, that's the best mana creature other than Lotus Cobra, which is newer.
What about so you think more people are playing Llanowar Elf than Goose?
I would say that I see significantly more elves than gooses. There is one really cool deck you can play. It's a combo deck that came up pretty recently with the printing of the new 2/1 wizard that copies something, your next spell.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this.
So it's like this really interesting deck where basically you neoform away a creature. Your neoform gets rid of a goose or an elf. It gets a dualcaster mage into play. It copies the neoform, and you then make 1,000,000 copies. You get all your dualcaster mages. You get all of your Glasspool mimics. So now you have 12 dualcaster mages that all have come into play. One bigger because of neoform. And your last creature you get is the 1/4 or 1/3 defender. All your creatures have haste. You attack that turn for like 24. It can kill you on turn 3. It's a pretty cool deck if you don't have a piece of interaction. What I found playing against it is if you can wait to kill the thing that gives all their creatures haste, they can't kill you that turn. And so if you have like a response or like a wrath or something, great. If you can't do that, then you have to figure out a way to either counter the neoform or just keep their creatures off the board. If they don't have a creature neoform, they can't win. So if you kill everything early, the deck is totally weak. But it's really cool. I mean, it's a super sick. Like the fact that you can do that in this format is really awesome. So
yeah. I mean, I'm excited to get back into arena Magic now that Omnath is gone. So I'm really hyped, and hopefully this has been kind of like helpful for people. I think that the one, I guess, last question we have is mana bases in historic versus modern.
Yeah.
What does it look like, right? Without fetches, without shocks, how does one kind of attack the format without those resources?
The mana base is pretty clean. If you're playing multiple colors, like if you're playing 3 or 4 colors, definitely playing what's it called? Fabled Passage is key. That's like a really important one. A lot of decks will play 4 copies of Fabled Passage. You have access to now the flip lands from the new set, and they're all great. Those are really, really, really good lands. You have access to check lands, and you have access to shock lands. So the combination of like Fabled Passage, check lands, shock lands, and also now flip lands, there's enough. Like there just are. Like there's like I don't play against decks where I'm like sitting there and I'm like, okay, he's got to draw and hit his exact drop here. Otherwise, he can't do the thing he's doing. And if he doesn't, I'm going to be able to tempo him out. I feel like that never happens. They always hit their colors. The mana bases seem to be pretty silky smooth. And if you go to Goldfish and you look at their historic database of their most played decks, the top decks are 3 color, 3 color, 4 color. That's 3 of the top 4. Right. So the mana bases are clearly not a problem.
Yep. It's pretty easy. I guess if that many are those color combos, do you think it's almost the opposite problem? Like the lack of a Blood Moon, the lack of a good wasteland variant or color screw mechanic makes it so the format is too easy to splash all the colors you could ever want.
I would say so. Yeah. I think probably having greater access to something to hose mana bases would make the format a little more competitive. I mean, I don't think it'd be super sweet if it was in red, because then just like goblins, burn, wizards, Rakdos, sacrifice, all the like red based decks would just get that much better, and they're already kind of obnoxious to play against. I already don't love the red deck. I actually already find that the red wizards deck is one of my least favorite matchups. It's really consistent, and they're more creature based with their damage than you would expect. So there's a lot of like haste. It's just that I guess the deck I'm playing doesn't gain life that well, but if you look at most of the top ones, Uro's the main life gain card. That's the key, like that's the thing that keeps you alive against those decks. But other than that, there's not that many like really good ways to gain life early. So those red decks can be pretty obnoxious. So I think if they had access to a color hoser like Blood Moon, I don't think that'd be that sweet.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think like how to produce a color hoser that isn't unfun. And like, I think honestly, maybe the best answer is like something like Price of Progress. I don't know if this makes the mono red problem any better. But like stuff like that at least offers the benefit of like punishing people for that many lands and letting people go down. But maybe you don't need it. Maybe the format's like just good enough that like there's a variety that you don't need to go against. But if every deck is 4 color, that I think is a sign generally of an unhealthy format, right? Like that's one of the worst standards ever. Multiple of them were ones where 4 color decks were the best.
Agreed. Yeah.
And so if Historic is in that space, maybe that's a problem, but maybe it's just not. And it's just like, there's a reason to be in every color combo, and then you're better off. Cool.
Yeah. I highly recommend it, guys. It's a super fun format. I've had a great time playing it. It's very accessible. It doesn't feel overpowered. And Arena is set up in such a way that getting in and playing one of those like mono red type of decks, if you wanted to just like grind, because that's the coolest thing about Arena. It's the thing I like so much. I'll sit there, I'll power through, let's say, 12 games of Historic, like best of one. Maybe takes me 40 minutes, let's say, 35, 40 minutes. By the end of it, I've got like 7,000 gold or something like that, or maybe not quite that much. Maybe it's 5,000, 4,000, but like that's like 4 or 5 packs. You can just immediately turn those into 4 or 5 packs. All you have to do is just play games. You win some, you lose some, you play some good games. You just grind away and you just keep getting packs. You just keep filling your wild cards to get the cards you want. You have to do it for a little while, but it's pretty fast and pretty fun and pretty easy. And you don't have to spend much. If you buy like a few packs to get started. The other thing I can tell you guys is they offer like the 3 free packs thing for all the new sets. It's generally speaking like play M21 or like play Ikoria or whatever the thing is. It's like usually on the back of those tokens you get. And if you just look online, a lot of the codes that they're put out are available. And sometimes the ones from the previous sets or even the set before that don't expire. And they don't expire right away. If you enter them, you still just get the packs. So if you guys are trying to get into Arena, I mean, I can't guarantee that's going to work. And it's obviously not like the thing that we're supposed to be promoting, because I don't know if that's allowed or not. But like look online, try old codes. Sometimes they work.
All those old codes are meant to be like something people can get. So I think that's fine. It's yeah, I think that's okay to look at. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like at one point I had a friend get on and they were like, how can I get into this? And they entered in 6 sets worth of codes and they got 18 packs. They just opened 18 packs. That's enough. Opening 18 packs is like enough to get started.
Yep.
That'll build you a deck.
Right.
So
cool. All right. So I think that is it for this episode. Thanks so much, our patrons. Thanks so much, our listeners. Thanks so much, Marshall, for editing all of this mess of a goodness. Thank you, everyone. Now, just last shout outs. You can follow me at Cass Wiley on everything from Twitch to Instagram to Twitter. If you want to see what costumes I've been wearing every day, go to Instagram. That's where you get all of the pictures. Ben is at Ben Bateman Media or at Ben Streaming on Twitch, which is
Ben Bateman Streaming on Twitch, Ben Bateman Media everywhere else. Yeah.
And you're streaming around twice a week at this point on Twitch, so definitely worth following.
I've slowed down a little with everything, with being here in Seattle and like doing music. I've been doing a little bit less of it, but yeah, I mean, I'm definitely still doing some of it. So go check it out. Wednesday nights tend to be that's the main night.
Okay, cool. And then make sure to hit that follow, subscribe, and like button. Make sure to post comments below. How do you build a deck? What is your deck building strategy? We'd love to hear it. All right, thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.